Hello, friends. Welcome to the cafe. Tonight, let's paint a little and reflect a bit. So, I'm working on this little digital painting that I started yesterday. I began this painting after I finished another one, also digital, and I was still outside as the sun was setting. I was looking around, and somehow one particular frame stood out to me, and I thought, okay, I think I want to draw that. I want to make a painting of that or something. The ideas were clear in my mind of how to go about each part of that frame. But today, as I was continuing to work on it, I realized how different it's been becoming from how I initially imagined it to be. That's neither good nor bad objectively. It's more of just an interesting reminder of how silly life can be and how strange making art is. Of course, I could simply just attribute it to a lack of focus on technical drawing, since as I was working on it and as I was feeling the flow of the colors, I eventually ended up just scribbling through and playing with the different shades that I'm working on, and I loved it. And even today, now, what really uh, called me to start this little chat is this serendipitous meeting with a new technique of sorts, a new kind of coloring of sorts. New in a way that I've never really tried to do it before. But now that I have, I realize how much power it gives to the image that I have in my mind as it transposes itself into something more concrete. I had another thought about art earlier. By earlier, I mean yesterday. Yesterday, I was watching episode 1 of Star Wars, Phantom Menace, and there was a line there where Anakin was asking his mom if he can go. And it was a very cutely naive way of asking, and quite common also for kids as young as him, saying, "Can I go?" This very juvenile tone. And in that scene, his mom responded something along the lines of, "It's not a matter of other people giving you permission to do a certain thing. Your destiny, your path lays upon you. And what's to be done is for you to choose it." So essentially, what his mom is telling him is, hey, your question's wrong. I think if it were an oral exam or a philosophy quiz, that's what the professor would say. Or a teacher in whatever subject, if that teacher is snarky enough. I think I like that part because somehow in Anakin's naivete or youthfulness in asking such an innocent question, right? Can I go? A part of that resonated, and that even if I don't realize at times before doing any particular thing or going through a project or going about just something that's supposedly routine or supposedly normal or not that much of a big matter, I find myself in situations where I have a tendency to ask, even if just within me, to wonder if I have a permission to do a particular thing. Knowing how Anakin ends up being, which actually haven't watched all of the movies yet, but the way his mom answers seems to me like she has an idea of really what's going to happen to the kid as he grows up. And though it's not the happiest of situations or the easiest of situations, she said her answer with strength, as in strength that wishes strength upon Anakin himself. And that was as much of a solace for me as it was probably for the character of Anakin to have such a significant figure, one who's taking care of you and has been integral to your life, to tell you that you can do this thing that you're not so sure of. The thought that I had related to that was with regards to the art piece that I was working on before this one. The idea is on reworking artworks. That art piece started a few days earlier, and at the end of that art session when I started it, it was a finished image. There was a work there, a particular work that is complete enough to be shown to others or to be shared or to be looked at and reflected upon. But somehow I wasn't as satisfied with it. Not in a sense of that tendency of artists to never be satisfied with their artworks. I don't actually have that much of a tendency. I like to just get over a piece and then move on to the next one as soon as I can. But with that piece, I was looking at it and I thought, okay, something just doesn't seem quite right. Or not something, but just the whole thing seems incomplete somehow. I knew what could be done to make it more complete. But given the time of that session and everything else that needed to be done, I thought I'd rather just have one finished piece today. So that's what I did. And I thought, having signed it already, having noted it as complete already, as finished work, that it's done. It's already at its completion. It will be archived in that state. And I simply just need to move on to a new artwork. And then a few days later, I'm not sure if it was because I didn't know what to work on in terms of art, or I was feeling too lazy to draw or sketch a new piece, or overwhelmed at having to think of what to make, or that maybe I was really just called to go back to that piece. But I looked at it and I thought, okay, I think the only thing that I can do today, since I also didn't have that much time that day, is to rework this artwork. So I went back to the piece, revised it, did the additional changes, developments that it seemed to be calling for, and at the end of it, I felt finally that sense of satisfaction that I've done what I wanted to do with it. Strangely enough, at that point, I or the artwork seemed to have moved from being at 100% to 90% completion. That the day before it seemed to be at this sort of tense closeness that, okay, this is it. This is what it's supposed to be, whether it's satisfying or not, this is it. But when I was able to get back to it, do what I feel is it's calling for, that I was finally able to relax that tension. And so, in its actual finished form, according to me, in its 100%, it became no longer that closed, completed image, but rather it was incomplete. It was in a seemingly persisting work in progress state. And when I look at it now, or when I think about it now, it seems like the possibilities for it is still quite endless. Still a lot of things that could be improved upon it. A lot of things that can be experimented on so that it might become stronger in its message, or at least more aesthetically interesting. But at the same time, it's complete. Thinking about it now also, I realize that if I compare it with this one that I'm working on, this feels more cohesive actually. Perhaps that's because I had really intended this one to be a piece that sort of focuses on a scene piecemeal, a patching up of different things to put them together. So, what was the Anakin scene doing in my reflections about the artwork? In the simplest and least profound manner, somehow because the image was already complete, and that um, I had already put it in the archives, so to speak, that I thought I couldn't really do anything about it anymore. And that all I have to do was to move on to the next artwork, into the next task, and to the next activity. But that simple, almost mundane experience that likely I have probably experienced also some other days, but haven't really thought about it. Really just needed a change of question in order for it to have a new insight. That as I was focusing on this apparent fixedness of a certain thing, I thought initially that it was either that fixedness is followed through, or that one is stopped or not permitted to continue to do it. But more simply speaking, I think the dilemma is a lot easier. That at the end of the day, it's really just a matter of the one who can do something, the one who has agency, the one who is thinking of the questions and making the decisions, to ask themselves if they are to follow through that path ahead. If I were to simply decide that, okay, this is how I want this artwork to be, and then that's it, that's complete. Or if I decide that I think I want to open up this path again, want to open up the possibilities of this art piece again, even if it had already been labeled or tagged as complete. And that's also okay. That's also possible. The tendency then, when it comes to these kinds of insights, is to once again choose between two extremes, to decide between having this full agency and really putting it upon yourself to do something and open up the paths and follow through this, because this is either your destiny or something you've chosen or something that you want to do. But I think something that both making art and watching Star Wars Episode 1 Phantom Menace would illuminate us on is that sometimes it's not really a matter of choosing between the extremes. Just going at the more youthful, light, seemingly insignificant medium to embrace some sort of naivete and realize that that's just part of how life goes. That it's not always one big major decision. Not yet, at least. It could be, but not always necessarily in that case. At least that's what I've been thinking about. And that's what I've been trying to remind myself as I do all of these different artistic, literary, philosophical work, no matter what their supposed significance is in particular institutions. At the end of the day, they're just actions as fleeting as life itself. And something that I'm still trying to think about is this idea of a slow philosophy from this book I'm currently rereading. For some reason, every time I read it, I seem to be reading a new book. It's Slow Philosophy by Michelle Bolus Walker. And one of the basic ideas is to be able to read in such a way that is not in that tense, uber determined to get a particular thing way, but reading just for reading's sake, to put it lightly. I think that's what people meant by art for art's sake. Not art as in, or art's sake as in, get rid of any other meaning that is not the art itself, or keep it at that naive, juvenile level. But art for art's sake, as in, allow things to just be as they are. To make just because that's what you're supposed to do, that's what you want to do, that's what at hand at the moment. Or at the very least, to proceed with something and to do that thing, even if one isn't sure of where it's going to be. That after asking for permission to do something, or maybe after allowing oneself to just do something without having to ask for permission, perhaps giving oneself the permission to do that thing instead. To just proceed, even if the path ahead is unclear, or even if there doesn't seem to be anything happening or significant to paint for the sake of putting color into canvas, sake of making just so something is created, regardless of how or why. To let the how or why come about later on. As I was working on this painting earlier, actually, I've been thinking about how I was starting to feel again, or have been feeling once again, the sort of anxiety that I've had before or I've experienced before. Kind of anxiety that makes me want to just lock myself in my room or at home, never doing anything else but my routine, keeping everything to myself, keeping my entire existence to myself, and just living as best as I could in that form of limitedness. That fear of going outside and opening myself up to others, or more so interacting with others for more than just a shallow small talk, which I find strange because that is not what I have had to, what I've been doing recently. The opposite is what I've had to do. I've had to be out and open and interact, and I love that. I enjoyed that kind of existence, to be with others and to build worlds with them. Yet somehow I've been having still those feelings of wanting to just be on my own, be alone. And honestly, I don't think those really left me. If I were to think about it, they've always been there, sometimes little stronger than other seasons. But lately, at least a few hours ago, it felt so strong that I thought that maybe that's really my default state. I'm really supposed to just be a hermit. But somehow, I'm not so sure if that's what I want. And with the kind of things that I do now, I don't think that that's the most appropriate way also of being. And I knew also somehow that even if that were what I'm supposed to do, I don't think I want to choose that if I were choosing it in a state of worry and anxiety. If I were to be a hermit, I want to at least be a happy hermit, not a scared, anxious one. So I was trying to think of that, how on one hand I think I don't want to do anything, I just want to not be, not even be, I just want to not be. Which transition to, okay, not really that I don't want to not do anything. I don't want to do anything. But that I just want to do the things that I want to do. I don't want to do what I may be told I should do. I only want to do the things that I've chosen for myself. Then eventually, I realized that, or not really realize. So I went on that stage of, okay, for now, let's just try to do these things. And then keep to ourselves and let's see how that comes in. So as I did that, as I worked on this painting, eventually the anxious feelings resolved themselves, or at least left me be for now. And I feel much better. So, thank you for listening.